significant events today. First of all, the appointment, as you mentioned, of General Jay Gardner to oversee the Iraq's transition to self-rule, very important to the Arab world. He'll have significant issues to deal with, including the widespread looting that you've seen. The Arab world here is very, there's a lot of images on television of the looting of the museum, and particularly that guy with that pistol whipped the other man in the Baghdad streets there. Is very troubling to the Arab world. The other issue he's going to have to deal with is convincing the Arab world that he's not there permanently. There's lots of reports in the Arab media about this is the American invasion is the new British imperialism. And so he will really have to convince them that he's not there permanently, that it is indeed just a transition. We have a shot today from the Arab street talking about the looting.
Where's the American? Where's the dreams of American? Where's the American? This is how Iraq wants to be. Everybody's stealing and looting from everybody.
And Tony, also significant today, the arrest of Iraq's top science minister, who supposedly will be able to find the weapons of mass destruction. That's a key point that people here in the Arab world want to see. I'm holding a local Arab newspaper from Amman that basically has an editorial today saying, where are these weapons of mass destruction? We haven't seen any, and basically portraying that issue as a ruse, one that would allow the Americans to come in and control Iraqi oil and basically protect Israel. So if they can find any weapons of mass destruction, or this science minister can help them, it will really help them on in the Arab street as well. Back to you, Tony.
All right, Douglas Kennedy, thank you very much. And folks, before you start sending us emails, when Douglas was referring to a SOT, he was not talking about the guy who was complaining. SOT is television speak for sound on tape, and he had plenty of sound on that tape. Now, Iraqi reconstruction, that's a very big topic. We're going to ask the question, how do you prevent Iraq from becoming a basket case? We'll talk with an Iraqi businessman now living in the U.S. right after these commercial messages.
Stay the course. Keep your focus. It's how champions stay champions. In investing, the same holds true. Concentrate on your long-term goals. Talk to your advisor about Oppenheimer funds.
The question of the day, how do you rebuild economically a nation that has been under the thumb of socialist rule for more than 3 decades and of Saddam Hussein's brutality for more than 2? Joining us with an answer, Rubar Sandy, an Iraqi-American businessman who's got some answers. But first, Mr. Sandy, before I get there, I want to ask you a question, because I hear there's a great story here. What did you do when you saw the statue of Saddam Hussein coming down?
Without knowing, actually, I just ran out to the streets. I took a cigar in my hand, and I was in my pajama and walking in the streets of London, not knowing what I was doing. It was a cold weather, and but I was so happy and excited. I really didn't think that I would live the day to see that Saddam's regime is gone and to see that Iraqi people are free. Finally, they are free. And I took such a deep breath, and I said, finally, I am free. Despite that for 27 years I've been living in US, in the free society, but my family and my people were not free. But now they are all free. So I am excited and delighted, and I can't find words to express my feeling.
There's been some criticism in the United States and here in the region that the United States and the coalition forces haven't done enough to suppress looting and so on. What's your view of that critique?
I think we should first thank United States. We should thank the American Armed Forces and specifically President Bush for believing in Iraqi people and supporting their freedom. This is something natural and normal, not only in Iraq, in any country. This looting happened when we had Rodney King's situation. It happens in other countries. People feeling the sense of relief, so people want to feel that they have something to get back from Saddam's regime, and this is the way how they express their feeling. I say if this is what it releases their feeling, if this is how they feel that they could set their freedom just to sense that they are free. As long as there are no casualty, no injury, no human death, this is only material, and material can be replaced.
Well, let's talk about practical matters now, which is economic reconstruction in Iraq. It's a nation, as you pointed out, that has been under corrupt rule for a very long time. It doesn't have any recent experience with the kind of entrepreneurship you've been practicing in the United States. What do you think the U.S. needs to do? And maybe more importantly, what do other Iraqi exiles such as you need to do to help that economy grow again?
Well, the very first thing, we have to work in a way to stabilize the economy and to add value to Iraqi currency. Now, obviously, the very first thing is rule of law. And then we need to go back and reassess everything. We need to go back to reassess sector by sector, because for past 20-some years, it's been kept secret. It was ruled by one person, Saddam Hussein, so the lack of information will be difficult to assess from outside. We've worked with the State Department for the past 10 months to come up with a plan, a detailed plan and comprehensive plan how to deal with the future of Iraq. And I think we have a pretty much good idea what are the steps that we would need to take and how to do it and what are the resources. But we need to remember that Iraq is very rich in oil and also rich in resource of human resource. The largest and the most educated workforce in entire developing country in Iraq. So people like us need to go back to help the Iraqi inside Iraq, but we definitely need the Iraqi inside Iraq, because they are the one who knows what happened and have the extensive and detailed knowledge of Iraq's economic condition.
Have you had an opportunity this week to speak to anybody in Iraq?
I have spoken to my family and friends. Actually, when the regime crumbled and when we heard that Baghdad fall, they called me, and it was nothing but a joy. Even then, they were still afraid to mention the name Saddam Hussein until I told them, this is for real. You could say it, and you could go out to the streets and celebrate. So the joy is you can't really express the feeling and the joy just by words. That is not something they can do. It dawns on you slowly, and it's step by step. I think every day we find out, I wake up, I said, God bless America, and God bless President Bush for helping the Iraqi people to be free. All the things we see, I think it's only temporary. I really believe we have a plan, and U.S. government has worked extensively and built a comprehensive plan to deal with the economic reform of Iraq and also the political reform of Iraq. I know currently they are working on the police reform, in the judicial reform, and economic policy reform, which is important to transfer Iraq to the democracy. And as I said, the working group of the State Department worked for over 10 months now in every sector. So we just need a chance for things to settle down, because still there are pockets of resistance. There's still a little danger in the street. Once these things root out and a little bit clear and calm in the cities, then people like us, we can go back and help the Iraqi there and help General Garner to establish the various means of rebuilding Iraq.
All right, Rubar Sandy in Washington, D.C., thank you very much, and his comments provide a perfect jumping off point. After the break, we're going to talk about President Bush. He says Saddam Hussein's regime, it's finished, but the war is not. We'll have a live report from the White House in just a couple of minutes.
Hi, I'm Matt Mazzei. This year we've hit a milestone. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary, and I'd like you to come join us.
Mazzei Pontiac Cadillac Buick GMC in Antioch is happy to have given you the service you deserve over the years. For 2 years running, we've been the #1 Pontiac GMC truck volume dealer in Contra Costa County, and it's all because of you.
All of us at Mazzei thank you, and we look forward to serving you for another 50 years.
Come celebrate with us at Mazzei Pontiac Cadillac Buick GMC in Antioch.
At Davidson & Licht, it's all about service. That's why we have convenient storefront parking and even a children's playroom, so you can choose from the largest selection of Rolex watches in the East Bay.
Oh, he's been wanting a Rolex for years. He's gonna love it.
Wow.
Happy birthday, honey.
Honey, where are the kids?
Oh, I got a babysitter.
Bruce, do you think we're taking this customer service thing a little too far? More than just fine jewelry.
Even pick up a thin dime, which makes it perfect for serving up those pickles and getting the last few olives out of the jar. Now you can have your very own Chef Whizzard for only $14.95. And it comes with a lifetime warranty. If it ever fails, send it back and we'll send you a brand new one. There's nothing else like it. Throw away that strainer because your Chef Whizzard is a great spaghetti server. And then we can serve up those meatballs. And it's a great salad server. Chef Whizzard is perfect for breading. You won't handle the raw meat and you'll never ever get breading on your hands. Don't forget how it conforms to the shape of the food. It's dishwasher safe and it locks for easy storage. Call now, we'll send you Chef Whizzard for only $14.95. But wait, call in the next 5 minutes and I'll double your order. You'll get 2 amazing Chef Whizzards for only $14.95. This special offer is not available in stores. Here's how to order.
Call 1-800-765-8034 to order 2 amazing Chef Whizzards for just $14.95. Don't miss out on this 2-for-1 TV offer. Call now.
Well, it's well known that the regime of Saddam Hussein, it is gone. It's over. It's history. But there is still more to be done on the battlefield. President Bush talked about that today in his National Weekly Radio Address. Joining us now from the north lawn of the White House with more on that, Fox News correspondent Molly Henneberg. Molly?
Hi, Tony. And on a more mundane level, paying for what's happening on the battlefield. President Bush is at Camp David this weekend. He'll return to Washington tomorrow, and perhaps one of his first orders of business will be to sign the war supplemental that was passed by the House today and passed by the Senate last night. And it provides about $80 billion to pay for war costs and some reconstruction in Iraq, at least for this fiscal year, which has about another 5 months to go. The president's out of town this weekend, but some pro-war supporters are in town near the Capitol, rallying in support of our troops in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Anti-war groups are out too, along with protesters who disagree with the policies of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Both have committee meetings in Washington this weekend. Also meeting here near the White House, finance leaders from the 7 wealthiest industrial countries. The group has endorsed today a reconstruction plan for Iraq that will involve the World Bank and the IMF, which are both lending institutions, and the United Nations. The U.S. had argued that a new UN resolution would not be necessary for the global effort to rebuild Iraq, but now the G7 finance officials say they support such a resolution. Also, the group agreed to discuss a U.S. plan to forgive part of Iraq's massive foreign debt, mainly debts to Russia, France.
You met, was he a convincing look-alike?
It definitely was the image of him, yes.
So when you saw the most recent pictures of the person who was supposedly Saddam Hussein milling about in the crowd, kissing a baby, high-fiving people, this is from last week, did you think it was Saddam Hussein or did you think it was a body double?
No, it was Saddam Hussein, because these 3 bodyguards, when all the time be with him, he never sent these bodyguards with a body double. He's just with Saddam Hussein. And definitely, you know, because it was kind of my job that I can feel who's the Saddam and who's the body double.
Now, his son, Uday, of whom you are the body double, for whom you were the body double, I should say, he has a reputation as being particularly brutal, some say even more so than Saddam Hussein. I understand that at one time he shot you?
Yeah, the night I left Baghdad, we have an argument, and just he picked his gun and shot me in my shoulder, yes.
And how did it come to pass that you were able to leave Baghdad?
Wasn't this easy, you know. After he shot me, I left the hotel where we was. His bodyguard started chasing me around Baghdad, nearly 1 hour, 1.5 hours. I was bleeding. I tried to escape to North Iraq. I drive over 450 kilometers to Mosul, from Mosul to Duhok and to Zako, where it was the American military base.
Latif, I just want to stop you for a second to show our audience what they're looking at. This is Uday on one half of their screen, and of course you're live on the other half, and we can see how similar you look to him. I understand that that's disturbing to you.
Yes, what should I do? You know, I try to change it. I try to get over this evil. Just this is me, you know, some bad luck in my life.
Do you think that at this point, Uday and his brother and Saddam Hussein are still alive?
It's very difficult to say, you know, because was something else, you know. Everything has been changed, you know. Everything has been changed 180 degrees, you know. We thought Basra got to be first county be down. Basra started fighting for 20 days. We thought Baghdad got to be the real fighting. Baghdad has been surrendered after just 2 days, you know. It's very strange, you know. I wish he's not, you know, alive. Just I wish him alive for a reason. I don't want Saddam Hussein or one of his government be killed. I want them to see him, you know, by trial. I want to see him in the court. I want to see them in a prison. I want to they test what they give to the Iraqi people.
You would rather he be tried for war crimes than killed?
Sure, yes.
Well, Latif Yahia, you have an interesting story. You've written about it in a book. Very interesting. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Now let's go back down to Washington and Brian Wilson.
Well, as always, whenever we get an embedded reporter or one of our reporters in Baghdad, we want to go straight to them. And Geraldo Rivera is up and operating tonight. He is in South Baghdad, and he's at a very interesting place based on his earlier program this evening. Geraldo, tell us a little bit about where you are, what you're doing, and what you've seen.
Okay, Brian. Actually, I'm in a compound of one of Saddam Hussein's cousins in the south side of Baghdad. He's also a high-ranking official of the Ba'ath Party. I don't want to be any more specific than that for fear of disclosing exactly where this compound is. But it is a compound a little unusual, not exactly what you'd find in Beverly Hills. I mean, aside from the Humvees parked here, look what else we found hidden under a camouflage net. A fully operational, fully reconditioned Huey helicopter. If it looks a little shabby, it's only because they attempted to camouflage it by putting mud on the windows, Brian. It's really a good ship. It's flyable right now, we're told. Fully operational Huey helicopter. You know, we used them during the Vietnam era, but there are many armed forces that still use them. Indeed, I think there are actually some still active in our armed forces. Now, we come over here in a hurry because it's a little bit of a distance. We get to the villa, and there, all around, you'll find the men of Alpha Company of the 101st. They are the Rakistan Raiders, and they're getting ready to start their day. You know, we've tracked these guys from their original base camp in the southwest desert of Iraq. Here, go on, the guys. This is the lap of luxury, believe it or not, Brian. There is at least grass here, so they've bivouacked overnight here on the lawn of this rather gaudy estate. And by that, you know, look over at the pool. They have the Lion of Iraq up. You know, this is a country where people are in desperate need, but not so the relatives of Saddam Hussein. There is, to the left of the pool and in the building in there, I don't know if we have time to go inside, is the Ba'ath Party meeting place. It's quite lavish. I spent the morning, or at least, you know, the 10 o'clock Eastern time hour with the guys, and it was a lot of fun putting the GIs. I don't think you have enough cable there, Carl, but here, you can take a peek inside. Banged up a little bit, but it's there are portraits, if it's still there, of Saddam, Uday, and Oday, whatever his son's names are. But it was fun putting GIs in there. Oh, come on out, Carl. Now again, the guys of Alpha Company. You know, there is a great debate, as you know, Brian, about what role the United States military should play in bringing order to this increasingly chaotic country. Some say the military should become cops. ASAP. These guys, though, still feel that they have a war to fight. They've been spending these days finding ammunition caches, fighting off snipers, blowing up. We found 6 other fully operational helicopters, Warbirds, in another compound not far from here. So this is where we are in the south side of Baghdad. The guys eating their MREs for breakfast, getting ready to start their very active patrols. They're out of Fort Campbell, Texas, of course, the 101st, the Screaming Eagles. The famed air assault division. We earlier interviewed the general, Major General Petraeus. He thinks the war is going very well. They're ready, they're willing to take on that police job if indeed it falls on their shoulders. It's not their favorite thing. They still think they want to, their priority should be Saddam's army or what's left of it. But they're ready to bring order out of the chaos here if need be. Brian, back to you.
Geraldo, very quickly before we go on, that helicopter must have been quite a surprise to see a U.S.-built helicopter in the backyard covered with camouflage. I bet Jaws just about hit the floor.
You are a master of understatement, my friend. It was a real shocker. And they had the camo on it and the mud on it, and we knew it was something. But then when we actually unveiled it, and to see it, it's not, you know, your little commuter chopper. This thing carries 12 people. You can have, you know, 2 gunners on either side. It's the famed Huey from Apocalypse Now. It really, you know, to see it set down right in the guy's backyard was quite extraordinary, Brian.
All right, Geraldo, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll check back in hopefully with you again later this evening. And tell your cameraman I said check the back focus. All right, let's go to Captain Chuck Nash, who's over in the war room right now next door. He's been looking at all the maps, getting the read on what's going on. And Chuck, I think it's time for our nightly chalk talk. Go ahead.
Okay, Brian, good evening. Let's jump right to the map and we'll get into it. First off, up in the north, a lot of good news. Up in the north, Mosul and Kirkuk, the Kurdish forces have moved in with the 173rd and some of our special operations people. There was some looting going on up there, but now that seems to have calmed down a lot, more than in other areas of the country, especially Baghdad. So it looks like that's under control. The other positive news coming out of there is that all appearances are that the Kurdish fighters are going to honor their commitment made by Messrs. Barzani and Talabani that once properly relieved by U.S. forces, that they would withdraw their forces from the 2 oil-rich cities of Mosul and Kirkuk. That's good news because it'll reduce any potential problems with the Turks. Out to the west, still looking at Al-Qaim. Al-Qaim is an area that back in the 1980s was the uranium processing plant that was part of the nuclear program that Iraq had. That was bombed extensively in the '91 Gulf War, and for the last 3 weeks, kind of a sleeper story, but for the last 3 weeks, there's been intense combat going on out there. The bad guys consist of Special Security Operations, Special Security Organization folks, and Special Republican Guards. On the good guy side, we've got some Green Berets and UK commandos. That's an interesting fight going on out there, and according to one senior military official, he said they're not doing all that strong fighting for nothing. They're hiding something. Could be interesting when we actually get in the gates and find out what's going on in there. In Baghdad, Baghdad has gotten a lot of coverage lately. The U.S. forces look like they're going to start patrolling with the Iraqi police. That's good news because we can't let this rioting and looting get too far out of hand, because if it gets too far out of the box, it's too far out of the box. Might be a little tough to get that genie back in the bottle. So it looks like they're going to clamp down on that. Most of the eyes looking at continued combat, it all comes down to one place, and it's Tikrit. And Tikrit is right where Saddam Hussein, it's his birthplace, it's where his tribe is from, his people are from, it's where a lot of people say that some of the senior leadership evacuated Baghdad and went up to Tikrit. There are other people who are saying, no, not so. What they did was they bolted into Syria. Some say Tikrit. We're going to find out sooner or later. The big question is Tikrit going to fall like Mosul without a shot? Or is Tikrit going to be the last really strong combat area? At this point, we don't know. Down south in Basra, the Brits continue their pacification efforts. A little bit dicey, but it looks like that has come under control. And in fact, the whole southern area of the country now is really turning a positive light toward U.S. and coalition interests, which was expected from the start, that being the Shiite area of the country. And last but not least, in Baghdad, looks like the first MEF is on the move a little bit to the north. We don't know why at this point, but evidently a significant force has moved out to the north to cover some areas. And down in Kuwait, the 4th Infantry Division is now pressing into southern Iraq. The question becomes, do they go to Baghdad to relieve the 3rd Infantry Division, which presses north to Tikrit, or does the 4th ID just keep right on going past Baghdad and up to Tikrit? This will all play out over the next 24 to 36 hours, Brian.
And how rough do you think it's going to get in Tikrit?
That's a good question. My gut tells me that given all the bombing, because there have only been 2 places for 5 aircraft carriers worth of air wing and the bombers and all the Air Force TAC Air that's based in theater, they've only been going 2 places, Al Qaim and Tikrit. So the people that are wearing Team Saddam sweatshirts are probably having a little bit of a hard time keeping their spirits up in Tikrit. It may fall, and I hope it does, like Mosul did, pretty much without a shot.
Chuck Nash, thank you much. We appreciate it. Please stay with us. We're going to continue our coverage of Operation Iraqi Freedom after a break. You're watching Fox News. I'm Brian Wilson in Washington, working tonight with Allison Camerata in New York. Don't go away, everybody. We'll be right back.
There's actually some technique to it.
The player.
I'm talking about a grift. It pays well.
The bait.
Everyone's working an angle.
The king.
Why do you let her do that if you care about her?
The law.
I'm looking for Jake Vick.
On April 25th, one good con deserves another. Confidence.
Oh my God, you're beautiful.
What do you say you get the ADD under control? You look me in the eye when I'm talking to you.
You never know when I'm going to lose it.
Rated R. Theaters everywhere, April 25th.
The Jewelry Exchange is a direct diamond importer and has their factory in full view. The Jewelry Exchange has thousands of diamonds, most with GIA or EGL certs, laser inscribed and guaranteed the lowest price. We have thousands of mountings to choose from, and your diamond is then set while you watch. Certified 1-carat ISI diamonds are only $2,900 and 1-carat solitaires are $599. Our new high-end cabinets have hundreds of rare high-end items. You can't beat our deals. Buy factory direct and save. The Jewelry Exchange in Burlingame.
You know when you're having a baby and everyone says it'll change your life, and you say, I know.
You don't know.
Life is full of surprises.
Hey, check this out. She's not supposed to roll over till next month, and she just rolled over.
You learn as you go.
We actually watched a movie last Friday. I'm gonna buy this.
Honey, she's 3 months old.
Yeah, but this is the bomb.
Everything we do is about connecting you to the stuff you love most. Comcast.
Welcome back, everyone. Joining us now from Detroit, a former member of the Defense Advisory Committee of Women in the Services and the president of the Center for Military Readiness, Elaine Donnelly. Hello, Ms. Donnelly.
Hi, Allison.
Thanks for joining us. We were just talking to Captain Chuck Nash about the final frontier in some ways, which is Tikrit. What do you predict will happen when our soldiers get there?
I hope they find all the records, everything that's needed to find the weapons of mass destruction, the items that so many people have been denying for so long. They need to look under those lakes. They need to go into all those tunnels. I think we'll find an awful lot there, and they will need protection to make sure that fires and looters don't cart away everything we need to see.
And do you think that we will actually find weapons of mass destruction there?
I think we'll find records of where they are. That's the important thing. And it's going to take time. People who think we're going to find missiles laying around or dangerous weapons out in the open, that's an unrealistic expectation. But I do think they will figure out what the best strategy is. They will use techniques that worked well in Afghanistan as well as going into Baghdad. And we'll have fresh troops going in, too. The 4th Infantry is coming in, some fresh Marine troops. They're going to have a tough job to do.
And might Saddam Hussein even be hiding out in Tikrit?
I rather doubt it. If he is still alive, he's probably in Syria or someplace else. Maybe, I really think he may already be dead or so seriously injured he has no power left. But we'll find out when we get there.
And yet the reason that you think that we might find all of these records there is because it's his hometown? I mean, I know that he was a notorious control freak, so he would keep things close at hand. Is that why we think there might be a cache there?
Could be. He showered an awful lot of money and resources on that town, his birthplace. And it's very likely that away from the capital city of Baghdad, There may be some things, and we also know there are military bases there. There's an Air Force Academy. The Republican Guard has a base there. It's probably a highly secure area, so I suspect we'll find much there that we may not have seen in Baghdad.
And do you think it will be a tough battle there?
It could be, or it might be over in a day or two. It's very hard to say. The troops have done so well and so beyond expectations that almost anything can happen, but we have really good leadership here, and I think everyone involved, the soldiers, the Marines, the airmen, the Navy, all the aviators, the National Guard, certainly the reserves and all their families deserve so much credit for doing the job that the president has asked them to do. They are liberators, not occupiers.
You were a former member, as we mentioned, of the Defense Advisory Committee of Women in the Services. So I have to ask you, were you able to watch Jessica Lynch's homecoming today?
Yes, I did, and I'm so happy that she is home. I feel very badly, though, because of what she went through. I don't think we know, well, we don't know the truth yet, but when you find out that someone's arms and legs, ankles, broken or seriously injured, she had no feeling in her ankles before the surgery that she had in Germany. I really am concerned about what it was that she went through. And I think often of Lori Piestewa, the woman whose body was found outside the same complex in a shallow grave. And I think about Shoshana Johnson, whose presence, we don't know where she is. She and 4 other men captured with her in a unit that probably would not have been that close to the front line in the last major war, in Desert Storm. The reason they were there was because of rule changes that took away risk of capture as an element in deciding where they would have been assigned or deployed in a given war. Unfortunately, that kind of egalitarian concept has subjected these 3 women to brutality and death, probably beyond our imagination. I really feel sorry for the family of Jessica. The joy that we feel in her return does not really replace the need to be very objective about this. I think the Pentagon needs to reassess these policies as soon as possible. And I think the field commanders ought to be given some discretion. I think we need to improve training so there's more weapons training rather than sensitivity training. There's a lot of things we can do. But right now, we just embrace this family and glad that she's home. We hope for the best for the others as well.
So you're saying that because this policy changed, because these rules changed in the past, these women would never have been in that location?
It is very likely. You see, there was a rule called the risk rule, and it applied to support units like this maintenance unit and so many others where women serve very, very well. But the rule said that they didn't have to deploy close to the front line in a unit or be attached to a unit that is likely to be in close combat, such as the 3rd Infantry to which they were attached. Now, it was not a perfect rule. It's hard to say exactly how it would have worked, but I doubt very much that commanders would have used a gender-integrated maintenance unit. They could have used an all-male unit, and that probably would have been just fine, and women could serve in areas where the risk would not be as great. Right now, we're saying risk of capture doesn't matter, and I think we need to think about that. Is that a step forward for women or a step backward for civilization? I think we don't need to give up respect for women, the cultural value that is important in our civilization. We don't have to sacrifice that on the altar of equality.
Are women playing a more significant role in this war than ever before?
They certainly are, no question about it. One of the other changes that were made in 1994 was a lot of positions that used to be coded all male are now available to either gender. Some of them I find very controversial. Air cavalry helicopters, for instance. I think those need to be reassessed. But in psychological warfare and in areas that perhaps the changes have worked well, fine. But the element of risk of capture is something that we really need to think about. It would really be a shame if the story of Jessica Lynch got into the minds of people as something normal, something to be expected. She may still be there if she survived, were it not for the Iraqi civilian who brought the soldiers to her. That mission has been accomplished only a few times in the last 50 years. It was a remarkable thing. And then with their bare hands, they dug out the bodies of those who were killed. That kind of thing doesn't happen every day, and we don't have to subject women to that every day. We don't have a choice about sending men to war sometimes, but we do have a choice about women. We respect and support women in the military, but I think we're asking of them unequal risk in a way that is not only harmful to them, but potentially harmful to the military as a whole.
Okay, Elaine Donnelly from the Center for Military Readiness. Thank you so much for that interesting perspective. And please stay with us. We have continuing coverage of Operation Iraqi Freedom. We will be back in just a moment.
I think I'll try this create your own pasta with bow tie pasta, broccoli, and Alfredo sauce.
Not bad. You'd make a great chef.
Thanks.
Hey, you get to pick the ingredients, but we still do the cooking.
Introducing Create Your Own Pasta. You can create your own unique dish by choosing your favorite pasta, sauce, and extras starting from $7.99. Romano's Macaroni Grill, making life delicious.
Check out Sunday's Winston Cup race from an insider's perspective on Winston Cup Wednesday. Enhanced coverage gets you inside the race teams.
Getting into the race, I really felt like we were going to be pretty good.
Only one network replays Sunday's race.
Trying to do everything we could to keep the car up front.
And only one network brings it to you with this much coverage.
A guy that messes up that many times needs to go back and learn how to drive.
Winston Cup Wednesday, Wednesday nights at 8, exclusively on Speed Channel.
The elements of a crime are means, motive.
You set me up. They killed my brother.
And opportunity.
I want to kill them myself.
What the hell are you?
I want justice.
You got justice?
Oh, yes, justice. You're going to have some fun together.
Blueprint for Revenge. We'll show you the ropes every Sunday in April at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Only on Fox Movie Channel.
I can wait.
Tomorrow, bagging bin Laden or reigning in Iran? After Saddam, what's the next target in the war on terror? Answers on Fox and Friends Weekend.
Welcome back, everyone. We want to go live right now to Kuwait, where Steve Santani is standing by in Kuwait City with the latest from the region. Steve?
Well, hi, Allison. Next to General Tommy Franks, the man in this region who probably has the toughest job is retired General Jay Garner. He spoke out to Sky News for the first time since arriving in this region. He's the guy who's going to have to rebuild Iraq and lay the groundwork for a new Iraqi government post-Saddam Hussein. General Garner paid tribute to a brilliant campaign fought by coalition forces and criticized the media for focusing too much on looting and not enough on liberation. He said the looting is to be expected and will eventually subside. And as for a future government, Garner's team is organizing a meeting on Tuesday in Al Nasiriyah among all the major Iraqi political factions. He said it's not nation building, but simply letting Iraqis build a nation for themselves.
That's the big tent. And they all put their nose under the tent, and we'll start sorting out there. And it's the beginning of a process for the Iraqis to talk and start dealing with one another on how they're going to govern this nation.
Meantime, the search continues in Basra at the site of a former security service headquarters. Locals say they heard voices coming from an underground prison at the building, and they believe as many as 5,000 people could still be trapped inside. But so far, they've been searching frantically and found no sign of anything. The British are helping in that search, and the search does continue. Live in Kuwait City, I'm Steve Santani. Allison, back to you.
Steve, this meeting on Tuesday that's being organized by Jay Garner, will this include Ahmed Chalabi?
Yeah, Chalabi will be there, and all the different political factions. No other well-known names that I'm aware of, but people from all the cities throughout Iraq will get there. People from all different points of view, religious and political, will come together and try to see if they can't find some common ground, figure out a way to establish a new post-Saddam Hussein government. It's not going to be easy because there are a lot of very deep religious and political divisions in this country, or in Iraq, just across the border. But that'll be the starting point on Tuesday, and it will happen in Al Nasiriyah.
Okay, well, that'll be interesting, Steve. Thank you for that update. Steve Santani, live in Kuwait City. Now let's go down to Washington and Brian Wilson.
Hey, another one of our military embedded reporters has just popped up on our radar screens. We want to go to Rick Leventhal. Rick, where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing?
We have moved with Fox Company and also joined up with battalion headquarters, the 2nd Battalion, 23rd Marines, at some sort of Iraqi military compound where, just like everywhere else in Baghdad, any picture of Saddam Hussein has been defaced. This one looks like modern art, like maybe pop art. Maybe Andy Warhol had a crack at it. But actually, right now, we're in the BAS, the Battalion Aid Station. This is where the surgeons and the medical team and the corpsmen treat the injured, and there have been many. These guys have been busy. Captain Jeff Brookman is the head surgeon, the chief surgeon?
Yeah, battalion surgeon, 2nd Battalion, 23rd Marines. Hoorah.
Yeah, hoorah. And you guys have been busy, haven't you?
Yes, sir. We have been very busy. Unfortunately, treating a lot of people and taking care of people, our Marines, some of the sailors, and also some of the Iraqi civilians that unfortunately have been caught in this, but we've been taking care of them and delivering 5-star medicine. And
they often take care under fire. Brian, just to illustrate that point, last night there was someone who needed to be airlifted from this facility. They were put on a medevac helicopter that clearly has a Red Cross on it, and when it took off from this compound, they took incoming fire. They were shooting at that helicopter.
Absolutely. Almost all the time that we've had to do medevacs via air or even by ground, primarily by air, they have been under fire, and that's a very precarious situation. I'm sure you understand that.
Now, this battalion is full of reservists.
Yes.
And you are a doctor.
Yes.
Back in Philly, right? Or
well, I'm originally from Philadelphia,
right.
South Philly to be proud of that, but practicing in Las Vegas. That's my home for the longest time now.
So you're a family doctor?
Family practice. My wife and I are in Las Vegas. Yes, sir.
And you're not to say you're an older gentleman, but you're not 21 years old anymore. I mean,
that's true. It's been a while since my bar mitzvah, but but I'm very proud of keeping up with everybody. I can do the runs and the humps with everyone else.
And here you are, 6,000 miles from home, in a strange land. You could be back home practicing medicine, and yet you're over here doing good work.
Yes, sir, and I'm proud to be here. I wouldn't have it any other way. My wife and I, we made a commitment years ago to serve our country. You know, it's patriotism, whatever you want to call it, but very proud to be here to serve with the Marine Corps. Hoorah.
Has there ever been a time during these last few weeks when you questioned your sanity, considering the circumstances?
Never once. Always knew right on the target to be here is the right thing to do. Very proud of who I am and what we're doing.
And what do you anticipate happening? Do you think that your job is almost over here?
I don't believe it's almost over. There is a lot more that has to be done obviously from the combat standpoint, but also from the humanitarian crisis intervention aspect, which will be gradually phasing in as this progresses.
The rest of the guys here, all reservists for the most part?
Yes.
And you're a paramedic, firefighter?
Yeah, I'm a paramedic firefighter for Glenn County Fire Department in Georgia.
Yeah, you want to say hi to anybody?
Yeah, I'd like to say hello to my wife and my kids, Marie, Chalice, and James. Love you and miss you, and hopefully we'll be home to see you soon, and I'm going to be there to stay this time.
Captain, I'm sorry, I didn't let you say hi to anybody.
That's okay. To my wife and all my family, God bless them all, and God bless all of us in the United States of America. Hoorah.
And let's get one more in here.
I'm Agent 1 Johnson from Hemet, California. Say hi to my wife, who haven't seen because we were both deployed at the same time. She just got home a couple of weeks ago.
Well, hopefully you'll be joining her soon. Again, we're inside the Battalion Aid Station. This is where they treat the wounded and the sick. And
hello, everybody.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Rusty Corpus. I say hi to my family. I miss them all, and we're having a good time.
Excellent. Hopefully they won't have too much more business here. We got one more that wants to say hi.
Well, I'd like to say hi to my pregnant wife, Monica, and my kids, Oliver and Sophia.
And I want to say hi to them, too. Brian, you got any questions for this group?
No, but I have a question for you, if you don't mind, Rick Leventhal. Yesterday, I think when you were with us, you were outside what used to be the Iraqi intelligence service in Baghdad. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
the Iraqi Ministry of Intelligence.
Now, there's a story that's being put out by the Telegraph newspaper in Great Britain, which says that top-secret documents obtained by the Telegraph in Baghdad show that Russia provided Saddam Hussein's regime with wide-ranging assistance in the months leading up to the war. It's a very convoluted story, but fascinating. And it goes on to say that Moscow also provided Saddam with a list of assassins available for hits in the West and details of arms deals to neighboring countries. Did you hear anything about that while you were there?
No, but I can tell you that they found a treasure trove of documents at that facility, including an underground bunker that was filled with row after row and stack after stack of papers. Now, we did feedback video of that. I know that we had that back in New York. They attempted to burn those papers, but because it was an underground bunker and there was very little oxygen, the fire snuffed itself out. It didn't go very far. What I was told was that they believe that most of those, if not all of those documents, were personnel files. The locals had told us that thousands of people had been brought in there as prisoners, and most or all of them had never been seen or heard from again. So there are a lot of personnel files in there. There may be a lot of other documents, damning evidence against the Saddam Hussein regime. The military intelligence plans to look at that stuff, obviously, very closely.
And of course, if this newspaper article is correct, a pretty damning evidence about the relationship between the Russians and the regime of Saddam Hussein.
Well, I can tell you, Brian, we've seen a lot of materials out here with Russian writing on it. Certainly much of the weaponry that we've seen has had Russian lettering on the boxes. We saw French missiles out here. We've seen other weaponry that was stamped from Saudi Arabia and from Yemen. Apparently all of these countries, either through an intermediary or directly, were selling or trading arms and other things with the Saddam Hussein regime.
All right, stand by. I think Allison Camerata has a question for you. Allison?
Thanks, Ryan. Rick, I have a personal question for you, because I heard you ask that doctor from South Philly if there was any time during the past few weeks that he had questioned his sanity of going to Iraq. And I've been wondering if there's any time in the past few weeks that you've questioned your sanity of going to Iraq, and now that things have quieted down, how you're feeling.
Yeah, I think that the moment when I questioned my sanity the most was when it was the middle of the night, and for the second time that night, we were woken up out of a sound sleep and told that, well, with the cries of gas, 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 and we had to put our masks on, put our jackets on. We had to get inside a vehicle and we went to MOP 4, which is the highest level. So we had to put the hood on and pull it tight, put our rubber gloves on and our rubber boots on. And we were sitting in this vehicle, 4 of us in the back in a cramped space for about 30, 40 minutes, wondering if we had just been slimed, as they like to say here. And that's when I questioned my sanity. That's when I wondered, what the heck am I doing here? Why aren't I home, safe and comfortable? And then they said, okay, all clear. And I got to take everything off, and then everything was okay again. And I didn't question my sanity anymore.
And what's going on outside on the streets today? Are you still hearing gunfire? Is there still disorder?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we got here last night, and even before it got dark, normally when it gets dark you hear more gunfire. Last night, before it got dark, we started hearing gunshots in the neighborhood, not necessarily directed at us. It could have been locals shooting at each other, but we did hear gunfire, and it got progressively more prevalent as it got darker. And we heard a lot of gunfire last night. I saw some red tracer fire at one point, and as I mentioned, the helicopter took fire as well. Today we're going out on 2 separate patrols into the neighborhoods surrounding this facility on the east side of downtown Baghdad. They're continuing to look for trouble. They're looking for the source of that gunfire, and possibly also looking at other military compounds, trying to find more weapons that may have been stored here. We saw a school yesterday that was filled with thousands and thousands of RPGs and other ammunition, very dangerous stuff. So they're trying to clean that stuff up. One thing I won't have to do, though, is get my hair cut, because I took care of that yesterday.
Look at
that. A Marine haircut.
It looks nice.
Pretty high and tight, huh?
All right, Rick Leventhal, listen, I'm glad that you haven't questioned your sanity and given up, because you've been absolutely fabulous throughout this whole thing. We appreciate your work. We appreciate the risk you take. We appreciate the risk that the men behind you are taking every day. And we're going to move on. We'll catch up with you later, Rick. Thanks a lot. Joining us here in Washington, the Vice President for Business Executive for National Security and former CIA analyst, Linda Millis. And Linda, thank you for coming in and spending part of your Sunday morning with us. We really appreciate it. You have an amazing background, and let me just share some of it with our audience so that they understand the depth of knowledge that you have. You've held positions at the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency. They're the people who listen to all the communications around the world, and over at the White House. And you've worked on some very high-level projects where you look at all the data that come in and try to figure out exactly how to turn it around and do that quicker.
Right.
And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, because we have these what are called national technical means. That's the code word for the satellites that listen and the satellites that see what's going on around the world. But in the past, it's been difficult to get that material, the information, the data, the intelligence turned around in a timely fashion. This time around, you say, the United States government has licked some of those problems.
Right. I think, first what I want to say, Brian, is thank you for having me.
It's good to have you.
I no longer read or write intelligence reports every day, so I want to make that clear. So what I'm going to say is based on what I know historically and what I see on the TV and what I read in the newspaper. And what I see is revolutionary change in the intelligence support to military operations. In the past, some of these national technical means, that intelligence has been collected and then sometimes sat in Washington and not gotten out to the troops that could use it and then actually act on that. But what we've seen is that in an amazing time, things are collected from space, then downloaded to some place in Washington or perhaps somewhere else over the world, translated, processed, and disseminated out to people who could actually take some action on that information. And I think that that has been a result of serious investment in the interconnectivity of the systems between the military and the national agencies.
Let me get this explained just a little more detail. Let's say there's a cell phone conversation in downtown Baghdad carried out by somebody that we're very interested in, somebody that the intelligence community has targeted.
Right.
They get that conversation, it's red flagged, it is sucked up, transmitted to some government facility, maybe Fort Meade, Maryland, the NSA, where it is analyzed and translated, and then they can turn that around and get it back to the battlefield, and how quick?
In a matter of minutes, it seems. I mean, you have seen where they have gotten information where they thought the whereabouts of Saddam, and then in a matter of minutes they have got munitions on target. So that really is a revolution in intelligence support to military
Now, is that more manpower or better technology? I mean, after all, I am told that at the National Security Agency, it's one of the only places where they measure computers by the acre.
They used to. I think it's a matter of investment in technology. More technology than manpower, and that in the interconnectivity of systems, that there has been more focus on that and supporting the warfighters over the last decade since the war in '91, because that was one of the main complaints that came out of that war.
You know, intelligence is not intelligence if it's not handled in a timely fashion.
Right. You got to get what people need when they need it. Otherwise, it's not useful.
Well, that's all good and fine, but what about, you know, post 9/11, where, you know, we went back and said, yeah, there were some interesting conversations that got scooped up. We just didn't look at them that closely, or we didn't flag them.
I think what you can see there is that the relationship between the intelligence community and the agencies and the military is much closer than the intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies. And so there's still some work to be done, because the law enforcement agencies would be the domestic agencies that would have done something for 9/11. And so unfortunately, that relationship isn't as strong as the military.
Now, the people who are out there watching this program, the people who pay the taxes, pay an awful lot of money for the ability to do this. And some people from time to time say, oh, we're spending all this money in the black budgets, all this stuff is going on that we don't really know about. I'm not sure it's a good investment of our tax dollars. What say you to that?
I say that when the intelligence that's being used in the war today, that the value of it, that this war has made it so much more effective, and it is worth the taxpayers' dollars. It really is a force multiplier in that, and it's saving lives. And unfortunately, the intelligence information that saves lives never gets revealed. And so sometimes the taxpayers don't always understand that, but they should know that lives are being saved by intelligence.
And we should explain why it's never revealed, because if you reveal it, then you are revealing sometimes the sources and methods of how that is collected, and then the source, if that's revealed, dries up.
Right, right. Sometimes we'll tell you what we know, but we're not going to tell you how we know it. We tell you how we know it, then we've also told the person who's revealed it, then they're not going to, communicate in that way again, and we've lost the sources. And that has happened in the past, so.
I do know, because I've lived in this town for 18 years, a lot of people who work, and they don't talk about their jobs, but one thing that I've noticed is there's not a more dedicated, more patriotic, more sincere and talented group of people than these people who work at places like the NSA and the CIA.
Right, and they're persistent and they're dedicated, and they don't always get to stand out in the spotlight, and a lot of their work is prevention, and they don't always get the credit they deserve.
All right, Linda Millis, thank you so much for joining and being with us here early in the morning. You know, we are very grateful to the people who want to get up and be with us and share their expertise and knowledge. Stay with us. Continuing coverage of Operation Iraqi Freedom continues in just a moment.
With Comcast high-speed internet, you never have to wait to watch video online.
See that? It's a T-Rex. Look at the teeth on that thing. What does it eat? Little boys, mostly.
A connection so fast, it's scary. Comcast high-speed internet.
At Davidson & Licht, it's all about service. That's why we have convenient storefront parking and even a children's playroom, so you can choose from the largest selection of Rolex watches in the East Bay.
Oh, he's been wanting a Rolex for years. He's gonna love it.
Wow.
Happy birthday, honey.
Honey, where are the kids?
Oh, I got a babysitter.
Bruce, do you think we're taking this customer service thing a little too far? More than just fine jewelry.
You want a revolution, well, you know.
And there was this on the way.
The Beatles Anthology, featuring rare or previously unseen footage of the Beatles' first recording sessions in 25 years.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night.
The Beatles Anthology 5 DVD box set for 3 easy payments of $26.98 plus $5.95 shipping and handling. Order the Beatles Anthology now and receive a free limited edition poster.
It was magical. 4 guys who really loved each other. It was pretty sensational.
This is the greatest story in rock and roll history. To order the Beatles Anthology 5 DVD box set and receive your free poster, call the number on your screen. 3 easy payments of $26.98 plus $5.95 shipping and handling. Rush delivery available. Call now.
Welcome back, everyone. We want to take you right now to Fox correspondent Douglas Kennedy. He's standing by live in Amman, Jordan. Hi, Douglas.
Hey, Allison, last night, coalition forces beating back an attack on the west bank of the Tigris River in central Baghdad. Following an intense firefight, commanders said they seized one of the last remaining strongholds of the opposition, defeating some Arab Mujahideen fighters in the city. But coalition troops continue to struggle to keep the peace. One Marine was killed on Saturday when a gunman dressed as a civilian opened fire on soldiers guarding a hospital in central Baghdad. CENTCOM says the gunman was a Syrian. Syrian support of Saddam's fallen regime is a big concern to the U.S. Earlier Saturday, U.S. Marines stopped a busload of militiamen on the Syria-Iraq border. They were carrying $630,000 and a letter offering a reward for killing American soldiers. Not the first time the United States has accused Syria of close ties with the Saddam regime. At the beginning of the war, the U.S. charged Syria with supplying Iraq with night vision goggles. Syria vigorously denied they did anything to assist Saddam. And back in central Baghdad, Arab television stations showed the Iraqi Information Ministry building burning, just one of many government buildings torched this week following the fall of Baghdad. Looters are also still a big problem in the city, including at the Iraqi National Museum. People stole ancient artifacts and treasures dating back thousands of years. And now the military is looking for a little help from the locals. On Saturday, senior Iraqi police officials met with coalition forces to create a strategy to help stop the rampant ransacking of Baghdad. They agreed that some 400 members of the former Iraqi police force will report back to work within the next couple of days with joint patrols to help crack down on looters. And here in Amman, Jordan's King Abdallah is calling on all Arab nations to help with the rebuilding of Iraq, saying he doesn't trust Iraq's future in the hands of the U.S. and the U.K. Back to you, Allison.
Okay, Douglas Kennedy, live in Amman, Jordan. Thank you, Douglas. Now let's go back down to Washington and Brian Wilson.
Thank you, Allison. Joining us here in Washington is the former foreign editor and chief diplomatic correspondent for Newsweek magazine and the author of At War with Ourselves, Michael Hirsch. He is currently the senior editor of the magazine's Washington, D.C. bureau. Michael, it's good to have you.
Good to be here.
Listen, I don't want to put you on the spot because we can't confirm it, and I know you probably can't confirm it either, but there is this report out there that says that they went through the what do you call, the intelligence service in Baghdad yesterday, and they found a bunch of interesting documents that had raised some serious questions about what the Russians were doing, providing information to Saddam Hussein's regime, even in the days just before the war. Some pretty interesting reporting going on from The Telegraph, which is a fairly respected newspaper in the UK. If that it turns out to be true, that foreshadows some serious problems in U.S.-Russian relations, does it not?
Yeah, it foreshadows serious further problems. I mean, you've already had a rift between George W. Bush and Vladimir Putin over Putin's decision to stand with France and China in the Security Council about this. You know, continuing allegations have arisen, going, you know, all the way back to Russian oil deals with the Iraqis, the extent to which the Russians might have been helping in some of the oil for food skimming of money off the top from the oil for food program, and of course the allegation that was made by the Defense Department in the early days of the war about night vision goggles. And if this latest report turns out to be true, I think we're going to be looking at problems in U.S.-Russia relations for a long time.
Well, as you know, you look at these things from overseas and it's hard to tell whether they have the ring of truth or not. But usually what you look for is a great deal of detail and richness in the kind of descriptions you're getting. And that indicates that you've got something pretty solid. And I must tell you, it's my opinion that indeed this looks pretty solid, but we'll have to wait and see for sure. Okay, let's talk about the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and that is it's going to be a mess trying to get back good relations with members of the European Union in the days following this war. And quite frankly, many people say it's in our best interest to do that. How do we do it?
Well, you know, I think one way might be to look as a model at the way we behaved after one of the last great victories, which was the end of World War II. You know, I was thinking the other day that
You know, FDR and Harry Truman weren't particularly fond of Charles de Gaulle either. You know, he spent most of World War II puttering away in London.
Stand by. I got to take a commercial break. We'll come back in just a second.
Okay.
Watch my dark circles, puffiness, and wrinkles disappear instantly. Sudden Change Under Eye does it. It's guaranteed to give you these results instantly. Sudden Change Under Eye Lift.
If you're overweight, remember 2 words, green tea. Mega Green Tea weight loss caplets can help you lose up to 20 pounds without drugs. Mega Green Tea for fast weight loss.
Suffer with scars from surgery and other causes? Then you need ScarZone, the scar diminishing cream to help fade away scars. Your scars need ScarZone.
Brace yourself for daring rituals, dangerous spells, and secret lives on the National Geographic Channel's Culture Shock Week. Witness the extraordinary, the fascinating, and a real-life culture shock for one American family.
It's not healthy.
Join me, Michael Davey, for an adventure you won't forget. Culture Shock Week. Check your local listings. Only on the National Geographic Channel.
It's April Fool's Month on Fox Movie Channel. All throughout the month, we'll show you so many stars it'll knock you off your feet, with plenty of slapstick, hoopla, and big laughs to brighten your days and heat up your nights.
Please don't be silly. We're talking serious.
Sick of being the butt of practical jokes? We'll sketch out a blueprint for revenge every Sunday night with films that express the art of getting even. And finally, monkey around with Planet of the Apes Week. Don't forget to log on to our website for more information, contests, and schedules. All April Fool's Month on Fox Movie Channel.
What was that?
Fox News Channel Weekend. Stay with us for a complete look, timely, in-depth coverage 24 hours a day. The latest on the war, live, expert analysis, exclusive reports, breaking news. First, powerful war coverage the Fox way. Weekends on Fox News Channel. Real journalism, fair and balanced.
Welcome back, everyone. I apologize to Michael Hirsch. We had to take that commercial break on rather short notice. We have to pay the bills, even though it's late at night. I want to pick up our conversation. Michael Hirsch is with Newsweek magazine. He's also the author of a book called At War with Ourselves. Michael, let's talk about post-Saddam Iraq. It's not going so well in the last couple of days. It's been pretty ugly in Iraq, a lot of looting. We want to temper it by saying that there's been a lot of good that has happened in Iraq with the liberation of the country, but it's been kind of ugly in spots. Your assessment?
Well, I think it's going to continue to be ugly. This is going to take an enormous amount of resources to get this country upright, not just the immediate stop to looting and getting, hospital, medical, food aid to the people, but the long-term goal of establishing a democracy, and a stable polity there. And I think that to get back to what I was suggesting before, this is the time, I think, at this moment of demonstration of American power to be magnanimous, to recognize that, down the line, in the long run, we're probably going to need the international community in here, including the UN, including help from the Europeans. We certainly don't want to commit our men and our treasure to setting this country upright for years to come. And I think so this is the time to sort of reach out and say, okay, whoever out there wants to help, even those Europeans who perhaps weren't with us before the war started, we welcome it.
But there is some bad blood between the Bush administration and Jacques Chirac, and some bad blood between the Bush administration and the administration of Gerhard Schroeder.
Well, there sure is, again, I think to hark back to the example of World War II, American power was just as unparalleled at the end of World War II and vis-a-vis the Europeans as it is today. And I think that you look at the lesson of what FDR and Harry Truman did. It was to bring in the Europeans, to create the UN, to create NATO, to try to create an international system. And I think that what the Bush administration has to do now to a certain degree, is swallow a little bit of its pride and open its arms to these countries which have showed a willingness in recent days to help in the post-Saddam building of Iraq.
And Michael, finally, there was a thing that you said in the pre-interview that I think is kind of interesting, that you believe that the Bush foreign policy these days is one of intimidation. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that it's a policy of sending a message to the world, and I think this is partly what Iraq was about, that Americans, particularly post 9/11, are just not going to accept the sort of depredations, the sort of behavior that we once did in the past, particularly with rogue tyrants like Saddam Hussein. I think that was probably a necessary corrective to 8 years of Bill Clinton. But at the same time, I think it's simplistic. It's one-dimensional. And to get back what I was just saying before, I think we also need to be magnanimous and to try to recognize that our role as a sort of overseer of this international system includes bringing other countries onto our side. And we still have to deal with mending the fences from all of this anti-Americanism that preceded the Iraq campaign. I think now, with this demonstration of power in Iraq, is exactly the time to do it.
All right, Michael Hersh, thank you so much for joining us at this very late hour. We appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
We're going to go back up to New York City and my colleague, Allison Camerata. Hello, Allison.
Hi, Brian. We want to go right now to the Pentagon and check in with Mike Emanuel, who is standing by live with an update. Hi, Mike.
Well, hi, Allison. Pentagon officials hope that Iraq's top science advisor holds the keys to Iraq's weapons of mass destruction program. General Amir al-Sadi gave himself up to a U.S. warrant officer earlier in the day in Baghdad. As he requested, it was captured on television by a German television crew. Al-Sadi was Saddam Hussein's chief science officer, the man basically considered to know where all the bodies are buried in terms of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction program. He claimed Iraq does not have any weapons of mass destruction. Pentagon officials say he may change his tune when he realizes he cannot be hurt by Saddam Hussein or his followers. Al-Sadi was one of the top 55 Iraqi leaders CENTCOM is looking for. Central Command is giving soldiers a deck of playing cards with the faces of top Iraqi leaders. The Seven of Diamonds spoke out about why he is a wanted man.
I was telling the truth, always telling the truth, never told anything but the truth. And time will bear me out, you will see.
U.S. and British forces are fighting to shut down the routes to Syria, where it is widely believed that Iraqi leaders may be trying to escape. Allison, back to you.
Mike, is the Pentagon commenting at all on whether or not they believe that leaders of Saddam's regime are in fact escaping to Syria?
Well, it is very much a concern here at the Pentagon that some of these big fish in Saddam's regime may be trying to go to Syria. Syria is a country that Secretary Rumsfeld and other American leaders have basically warned about trying to help Saddam Hussein's regime leaders. And so it is widely believed that some of the science advisors may have already gotten into Syria, and in addition to other Iraqi officials who may have escaped while U.S. and other coalition fighters were busy trying to secure cities that they may have hit the road and headed to Syria and gotten out of the country.
How about Saddam Hussein? Are they saying anything about him there lately?
Well, it's the hot topic here at the Pentagon, and anywhere there are U.S. military officials. Is he alive? Is he dead? There was some chatter to suggest from lower-level Iraqi figures that perhaps Saddam had died. At this point, they're not quite sure. They're looking for the evidence here to find out if indeed he is definitely dead, or if he may have gotten to Syria, or may be hiding out. There's all kinds of information out there that he may be hiding out, or he may be dead, and so they're not committing too much one way or the other. They want to find out for sure where exactly he is and track him down if he's still alive.
Okay, Mike Emanuel, live at the Pentagon. Thank you. Sure. Now let's get down to Washington and Brian Wilson.
All right. Week 3 of America at War was anything but dull for the men and women of the Army's 3rd Infantry Division. They saw their tanks roll into Baghdad, the Iraqi people dancing in the streets of the Iraqi capital, and eventually pulling down a statue of Saddam from the city's center. The 3rd ID's advance across the Iraqi desert was the largest mass movement of armor since World War II. And Fox's own Greg Kelly was with them every step of the way. Let's take a look back through Greg's eyes at the 3 weeks inside Baghdad.
The mission was to clean up the Republican Guard Medina's division south of Baghdad, and for 6 hours on Friday, that's what the 2nd Brigade combat team did, methodically destroying T-72 tanks made by Russia. For hours, these vehicles burned, and you could see huge explosions as the ammunition inside cooked off. Now, along the way, we saw some friendly Iraqis and also some not-so-friendly Iraqis. They came at us with AK-47s more than once. Battle damage assessment is still not complete, but commanders here are confident that the Medina division is all but dead. So we came in early this morning, a massive convoy. Basically, we've been destroying military vehicles on either side of the convoy. You can see smoke scattered about the horizon. We've seen military vehicles. We've also seen a lot of civilian white pickup trucks come at us. Fire returned by Bradley fighting vehicles as well as tanks. It's definitely a soldier telling him to lay down his weapon and get on the deck. The first time we've seen that.
There's a guy that's right there in the bushes.
Watch out, there's a guy, don't shoot him. Another surrender. They're both keeping their hands up. Unbelievable. This fight has been taken into the heart of Baghdad. We're not on the outskirts. We're not in greater Baghdad. This is it. This is Baghdad. This is what these guys came here for. We'll be here for a while. It was a bold, dramatic, and risky daytime raid deep into the city of Baghdad. About 26 tanks and 10 Bradley fighting vehicles penetrated the city limits, and they met the enemy every step of the way. In the end, about 100 Iraqi vehicles were destroyed, scores of Iraqi weapon systems taken out, and unit commanders tell us that about 1,000 Iraqi soldiers were left dead. It was a reminder to the Iraqi regime and any remaining fighters in Baghdad that the U.S. military and coalition forces are not 100 miles outside of Baghdad. They are right at its doorstep and can enter at will.
They took the palaces of Baghdad. Shortly after 6 o'clock this morning, the 2nd Brigade combat team of the 3rd Infantry Division roared into town. This time, it isn't a raid. They're staying. 2 of Saddam Hussein's palaces and the National Parade Grounds, sites that have huge symbolic significance under coalition control. We're at one of the palaces now. It was heavily damaged in last month's airstrike. Debris and rubble everywhere inside. It's kind of just a bizarre, surreal place to be. This part of the palace was heavily damaged by what we think was a J-dam. It really blew apart this room and a vast portion of the palace. But even with that, you still get a sense of the former opulence of this place. Apart from all the damage, there are marble floors, chandeliers, although they're all over the ground. Insulation is off from the ceiling. There's piping kind of drooping crazily from the roof, and just complete destruction, at least on that side. Now, in other parts of this house, there are rooms that are untouched, but even with all the damage, you get a sense that Saddam Hussein definitely lived very large when he was in power.
The 2nd Brigade combat team has seized 2 palaces in Baghdad. We were at the one that's a little bit older. This one is a whole lot nicer. The palace is very ornate, and everything seems larger than life, from these marble staircases to some of the bedrooms. This morning in Baghdad started with pockets of resistance. It's ending with pockets of jubilation. Not massive crowds of hundreds or thousands, but smaller groups giving us the high side, celebrating. You probably recognize the sword arches behind me. They're the gateway to the National Parade Grounds. It's here in this area that Saddam Hussein would proudly display his military on parade. Be interesting to see what his reaction would be to the current scene, U.S. military presence everywhere. So far on this side of the Tigris River in Baghdad, we've yet to see any massive displays of jubilation or celebration over what has happened here. But we have seen a lot of looting. Thousands of Iraqis going into closed stores and government buildings and taking everything from air conditioners to bedding. But the 3rd Infantry Division did not come to Baghdad to police it. They came here to defeat the Iraqi military. And despite the pockets of resistance that are still out there, it looks very much like they've already done that. In Baghdad, Greg Kelly, Fox News.
Okay, and stick around. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with more coverage of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
There are some who live for caring with all they have.
A very happy day in Operation Iraqi Freedom. All 7 American POWs in Iraq found alive and healthy. Their families relieved. Their commander-in-chief singing the praises of the latest American heroes. We've got the very latest on that story and new developments from the region.
Thanks to a tip from an Iraqi citizen, U.S. Marines recover all 7 American POWs in northern Iraq. I'm Major Garrett at the Pentagon. I'll have more on this story, plus breaking details on Operation Iraqi Freedom.
I'm Adam Housley in Kuwait City, where the 7 American POWs touched down here for only a few minutes. And that's good news. That means they were healthy enough to get back on a plane and head out of the region, eventually home to see their families. We'll have their trip coming up live on Fox News.
Anarchy, chaos, looting, or are things starting to get back to normal? I'm Steve Harrigan in Baghdad. That story ahead.
And we're going to bring you reaction from the family and friends of those 7 rescued Americans. All that plus breaking news on Fox News Live's continuing coverage of Operation Iraqi Freedom right now. And thank you for joining us for our continuing coverage of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I'm Paige Hopkins, along with Greg Jarrett. Good afternoon to you. Such a great day, the rescue of 7 American POWs.
We're going to be talking a lot about that over the course of the next couple of hours, but let's not lose sight of some of the other big stories today. U.S. Marines are in Tikrit, Saddam's hometown. Secretary Rumsfeld at the same time back here in the States saying, you know what? We now know, and I can confirm, he says, that a bunch of top Iraqi leaders have fled to Syria, and Saddam's half-brother was nabbed before he could
before
get
he got
to
into
Syria.
right
That's
before.
Right. All right, but our top story is obviously the POWs. We're going to get the family's reaction as the former prisoners are flown to safety. Let's get the latest on this story and the amazing tale of how they were found. A live report now from Fox's Mike Tobin at CENTCOM Forward Headquarters in Qatar. Mike?
Well, 7 U.S. prisoners of war. This certainly is a top story. Returned en route back to their homes now in what appears to be good health. They touched down in An-Numaniya after being taken out of the areas north of Baghdad by helicopter. They touched down at An-Numaniya, where they were photographed in what appeared to be pretty good health, taken by C-130 down to Kuwait City, where they had some preliminary medical examinations, and back in the air. We believe at this point they would be heading to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. General Tommy Franks says the U.S. forces heading north to Tikrit at Samarra were tipped off to the presence of these U.S. prisoners of war on the street, and these troops moving forward were able to scoop them up. Hear what General Franks had to say about that.
I don't have the full content of the way they were picked up, but what I'm told is that someone came up to our Marines who were moving along the road headed toward Tikrit and said, here shortly you're going to come in contact with a number of Americans, and just so you know they're there. And so the tip came from an Iraqi, and so I believe that our guys picked them up on the road.
And meantime, U.S. troops have advanced into Tikrit, Saddam Hussein's hometown. Earlier in the day, we heard they advanced without any resistance. Later in the day, there was some fighting. The generals here at CENTCOM say they are not ready to say at this point that Tikrit has fallen. Also, an Al Jazeera report interviewed some Kurdish, or some tribesmen, I should say, in the city of Tikrit, who said they're willing to negotiate a surrender provided the Kurds don't come into this town. U.S. Central Command says the Kurds aren't anywhere near Tikrit. The Kurds are cooperating with the coalition special forces in the northern reaches up around Mosul and Kirkuk. They are not heading down to the city of Tikrit. Aside from that, they say these tribesmen just don't really have the ability to negotiate a surrender. But Tikrit is said to be the last stand. General Tommy Franks says he doesn't know of another city that is being held by the Iraqi forces. And so with that being said, General Franks said it will be over. The military action will be over when they start routing out these pockets of resistance and destroying them. Back to you in New York.
All right. Mike Tobin, thanks very much for that report.
And a lot of happy faces. They're celebrating in Lithia Springs, Georgia, because that is the home
of one of the rescued POWs. Chief Warrant Officer Ronald Young and Fox's Jonathan Seri is there. He joins us now live on the phone. Jonathan.
Hi, Paige. They are celebrating indeed. Right now I'm in front of the home of Ron Young Sr. and his wife Kay Young. In their lawn, every single tree has a yellow ribbon tied around it as friends and neighbors drive by on the street. They give them honks and support. These are the parents of 26-year-old Chief Warrant Officer Ronald Young Jr. His parents realized their son was safe very early this morning when they saw him among a group of rescued POWs on TV. Later, they received official confirmation from the military. Their son is part of the 1st Battalion of the 277th Aviation Regiment based at Fort Hood, Texas. They were two men on board. He was one of two men on board an Apache helicopter that was forced down in Iraq during heavy fighting on March 23rd. Well, the very next day, Young's family saw video clips from Iraqi state television showing their son and the other pilot, Chief Warrant Officer David Williams of Orlando, Florida, uninjured but being held as prisoners of war. Now the two pilots are safe and back in American hands. Young is one of 5 children and grew up here in Lithia Springs. It's a bedroom community just about a half-hour drive outside of Atlanta. Obviously, people here are going to be thrilled to see him in person, and I'm sure that these yellow ribbons that are not just in front of the Young's lawn, but also throughout this small town aren't going to come down until he shows up in town in person. No word yet on exactly when that's going to happen, but his mother told us, just know he's all right is enough for us. Paige, back to you.
Thanks so much. And in case you haven't heard, 7 former American POWs now back in U.S. hands. This is just the best news.
It is.
And it's all thanks to a tip from an Iraqi citizen. The 6 servicemen and 1 servicewoman found just south of Tikrit.
And there are their faces up on the screen there. These POWs all said to be in good condition. Joining us now for more, Fox News military analyst, Major General Burton Moore, U.S. Air Force retired. General, good to see you. Thanks very much. What a great day it is.
Good afternoon,
with
Greg.
The screenwriter there, with the screenwriter there, show us on the map roughly where they were found and talk to us about this.
Okay, if we take a look at the screenwriter here, you'll see that Samarra, it's about 60 miles as the crow flies north of Baghdad. It's about 20 miles south of Tikrit, and they were found generally in the area, just right in this area right here, told to some Marines that were marching towards Tikrit by an Iraqi citizen, which I think is remarkable because now in 2 instances here, we had an Iraqi citizen that gave a tip regarding Jessica Lynch, and now another Iraqi citizen that has given a tip regarding these POWs. So it shows that as the Saddam regime has wound down and is now gone, that the Iraqi people really are looking to us as friends and that all of this is behind them, and I think they do not want to be associated with it, the past, the Saddam regime, and I think that's good news.
Major, given that this was a maintenance division, how prepared were these soldiers to be POWs?
Well, it's hard to say mentally how each individual was prepared, but they all receive a certain amount of training on how to react, how to resist, how to respond, what the code of conduct is, how to prepare yourself to survive, and it's key that you survive, and that's the new rule that has been in effect for some time, is that we recognize that an enemy, if they work hard enough, can break you down, but the key thing is to survive with giving as little information as possible, most of it irrelevant. Now, whether these people had as much training as, say, a Special Forces outfit, I know that's not the case, but they had a basic amount of training, and I'm sure it has helped them in the past couple of weeks.
General Moore, you made a comment off camera to one of our producers that I thought was interesting. You said, if I understand you correctly, that these 7 people, these POWs that have now been rescued, in a way they are a microcosm of America. Talk about that.
They are indeed. They come from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. They come from a good stretch of the United States, from Florida up to New Jersey, Georgia, Kansas, Texas. There is a gentleman that has dual citizenship. He is both a New Zealander and an American. They've been in the service for a short time, for a long time. And what they do, in my view, is reflect what the all-volunteer force has done for America, where people from all walks of life, from all races, from all ethnicities, from all religious backgrounds can come together and form a team and do this great thing that America and its allies has done in liberating Iraq from the Saddam regime.
General, given the way these POWs were found, are you hopeful that the other 5 still missing from this war will be found? And I also want to ask you about Scott Spiker. Are you hopeful we'll ever know what happened to him?
Well, with regard to the 5, we hope that they will be found, and we've been getting good news, not necessarily about the 5, but the fact, again, that an Iraqi citizen told us how to get to Jessica Lynch, that an Iraqi citizen pointed us in the direction of these 7 now ex-POWs, that hopefully there is another Iraqi citizen there somewhere who will also say, I know where these other 5 people are, or at least bring closure, whether they're POWs, whether unfortunately they've been killed in action. And I think the same thing with regard to Scott Spiker, that we will continue to try to find out as much information to bring this to closure. Again, as you've heard over and over again, we do not leave our people behind on the battlefield.
General, while we have you there, and the screenwriter,
Comcast delivers.
Talk to us a little bit about what may be the last strong.
The POWs appear to have serious injuries. Less than 2 weeks after being rescued by special forces, another former POW is back in the U.S. Private First Class Jessica Lynch is now being treated at a medical center in Washington. Coalition forces have been welcomed into the city of Kut. Local civic and religious leaders handed over administrative control of the town to U.S. Marines. An Iraqi police force trained by the U.S. military will patrol the city. Russia is refusing to comment on allegations it provided a wide range of assistance to Iraq in the months leading up to the war. The British newspaper, The Telegraph, cites documents found in the bombed headquarters of the Iraqi intelligence service. The paper reports that Russia provided intelligence on conversations between British Prime Minister Tony Blair and other coalition members. The Russian Foreign Intelligence Service says it's widely known that Russia has shared intelligence about things like weapons of mass destruction with certain countries since the early 1990s. But they say that information was always tightly controlled. An update now on the scene in Baghdad today. A huge plume of smoke rose over the western side of the city after 2 explosions were heard near one of Saddam Hussein's palaces. CNN's Michael Holmes says it's believed the explosions were caused by coalition airstrikes. A State Department spokeswoman says the administration is interested and will look into an apparent change in North Korean policy. North Korea's news agency quoted a foreign ministry spokesman yesterday who hinted that Pyongyang may be willing to take part in multilateral talks on the issue of its suspected nuclear weapons program. In the past, the U.S. has demanded talks include regional players South Korea, Japan, Russia, and China. North Korea had insisted on only direct talks with the U.S. alone. California prosecutors.
There were some Americans in a certain location, and they went and found 7 American servicemen, and they're in good health. As I recall, 2 have gunshot wounds, but basically they're in good shape.
The rest of that journey on the way to Crete by those Marines, though, they were met with basically no resistance, are in the area now, in the town of Tikrit, and that was the last major stronghold of Iraqi fighting that the U.S. had expected to find. It is another example of how the war is coming to a close, at least the combat phase of it. A couple of more examples of how it is going down. We are told by senior government sources today a couple of interesting pieces of information. One is that Jafar Dahia Jafar, the head of Iraq's nuclear program, is in custody. Sources say that he surrendered himself, but not to U.S. authorities. However, he is being shared with U.S. officials who want to talk to him about several things. One, we are told by the sources that he is a principal in the nuclear program. He will not only know what is going on, but he will know where any of the nuclear weapons were released or where they were put. Alex, back to you.
All right, that is certainly a major find for them potentially on the nuclear affairs front there. But let's get back to the POWs, Carl. I'm hearing a report they will be taken now to Ramstein Air Base and then transferred to Landstuhl Medical Center for any possible treatment they might need. Are you hearing anything along the likes? And outside of those POWs, Carl, there are still many that are missing in action. What's the status of them from the Pentagon's perspective?
First, I can tell you that without even talking to someone, I can tell you that is the path, that is the track. When they have injured who are in that theater, who need medical attention, who need to be looked at, the place they will go is to Ramstein. That's the air base, and then they will be transferred to that Landstuhl Hospital, which is very nearby. So, yes, I would almost confirm that for you on my own, but I'll check that out with authorities. But the other missing in action, as we noted, 2 Marines, 1 sergeant, 2 F-15 pilots are still missing, and that is their status at the moment, Alex.
All right, thank you so much for all the latest from the Pentagon. NBC's Carl Rochelle. We'll look forward to speaking with you again. After their rescue outside of Baghdad, the 7 former POWs boarded a military transport plane heading for Kuwait City, and NBC's Don Teague is live in the Kuwaiti capital with more on this developing story for us. Hello to you, Don.
Hi, Alex. Well, I can tell you that we've been on the phone within just the past 2 minutes with military officials trying to find out exactly where these POWs are now. As you know, they were flown here by C-130 about 3 hours ago, immediately whisked off of the airplane, taken in for some medical evaluations. It's what's called a cash unit at the airport here, very high-tech mobile facility, and the nurse came out afterwards and said that the patients that she had seen were doing great. They were laughing, joking, in very good spirits. All of the other reports talk about just minor injuries among the 7 of these POWs, even though, as we've heard, Donald Rumsfeld saying that 2 of them appeared to have gunshot wounds. We're told they all did receive some treatment to the north in Iraq and are in pretty good shape right now. So where are they now? Well, we've heard some reports that they're already on their way to Germany, but again, just about 3 minutes ago, we were on the phone with officials here in Kuwait, and they said they can't confirm those reports. As far as we know, they are still here in Kuwait. Our suspicion was that they were going to keep them here at least overnight, square away the logistics to fly them to Germany tomorrow. But I guess I have to tell you right now, we don't know where they are, but we know they're safe and sound in U.S. hands, and that's certainly the good news. Alex?
I'll tell you, Don, I'm getting some information right now as we watch another monitor. My producer's been telling me she's been monitoring a news conference going on right now that's live. You're seeing Jane Riley. She is the mother of James Riley. He is a sergeant, a 31-year-old there from New Jersey. We've been following this family all day long, and she apparently spoke with her son, and he said that they are right now in Qatar. So there you go. Sometimes there is we're not quite certain on some of the details. They're being told that they're going to be going now to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. We're also told that James Riley was injured. We don't know the extent of his injuries, though we do know he's on antibiotics, which can certainly be prescribed for a number of ailments, not the least of which being infection, which could come as a result of a bullet wound. We do not know, though, if he is one of those who did suffer gunshot wounds. Anyway, he is from New Jersey. We'll be following this family, the Riley family, and all those POWs. And I want to thank you as well, Don Teague, for the live report from Kuwait City. Well, rescued POW Jessica Lynch, we know she is back in the United States this afternoon. DNA, and that could help identify his body if he was killed in last Monday's U.S. bomb attack in Baghdad. You can get the very latest headlines every 15 minutes around the clock here on MSNBC or anytime on the web at iraq.msnbc.com. Well, obviously, the news of the 7 rescued U.S. soldiers.
Blueprint for Syria has a stockpile of the nerve agent sarin and is trying to develop more toxic and persistent nerve agents along with other weapons of mass destruction. In fact, this satellite photo shows a major chemical weapons and missile site near Damascus. Sources say producing sarin, VX, and mustard gas.
Syria is well aware of our concerns with respect to weapons of mass destruction and with respect to terrorist activity.
Syrian diplomats reject the accusations.
This is a campaign of misinformation and disinformation.
So is Syria the next target for the Bush policy of preemptive war? The president yesterday.
Each situation requires a different response.
Some experts say the U.S. is firing a warning shot at Syria that could backfire.
The more we keep threatening other countries, the more people in the region are going to stand up in anger against the United States and perhaps start taking actions against us.
Syria has been cooperating with the U.S. in the hunt for al-Qaeda. Another reason U.S. allies say this is no time for the administration to take on another Arab state. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News at the State Department.
There is a developing story we're following right now outside of our war coverage. A badly decomposed body has been found along a beach in the San Francisco Bay Area. Authorities are investigating the disappearance of Lacey Peterson, have been called to the scene. You may remember the 28-year-old was 8 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance this winter. So far, officials say there's no evidence yet to draw any connection.
We thought that because of the nature of where we found the location where we found the victim and the fact of the notoriety of the case involving Modesto, it was prudent to notify Modesto Police Department regarding this case.
And authorities separately had reported an infant boy's body with umbilical cord attached was found yesterday along a trail not far from where today's discovery was made. A live report coming from California at the bottom of the hour on this investigation. The situation with Syria. Why is the Bush administration putting the pressure on Iraq's neighbor? When we come back, a report from the White House and the thinking behind the strong words of warning, and my conversation with a congressman who's ready to send a serious message to Syria. And later, 7 prisoners of war now free and in safe hands. At 45 after the hour, Dateline NBC's Stone Phillips with an amazing interview with the family of Shoshana Johnson. MSNBC's live coverage continues after this.
There are a lot of used cars to choose from, but Honda certified used cars come with a factory warranty and have passed a rigorous 150-point inspection. So you'll almost never find a Honda put out to pasture.
For a limited time, get special APR financing as low as 4.9% for up to 60 months on all Honda certified used cars.
This looks great. Thanks, but I might take some.
Honey?
Sure. Let me get some more of that for you. I'll be right back.
You know, we're gonna have to break it in sooner or later.
Somewhere between Wyoming and Nebraska, there was nothing. Somewhere between 65 and 70, a law was broken. Somewhere between stop it and you're grounded, a mom pulled over. And somewhere between where you are and where you're going, there's a Super 8. See you along the way.
Cargill believes there is potential in each of us. And as our lives unfold, that potential is transformed into human accomplishment. The food we eat to nourish our bodies and minds has much to do with what we make of our lives. Every day, Cargill works at the complex job of satisfying the world's diverse appetite for food. Cargill, nourishing the potential in each of us.
Push him up. Push him up. Push him up.
The Jewelry Exchange is a direct diamond importer and has their factory in full view. The Jewelry Exchange has thousands of diamonds, most with GIA or EGL certs, laser inscribed and guaranteed the lowest price. We have thousands of mountings to choose from, and your diamond is then set while you watch. Certified 1-carat ISI diamonds are only $2,900 and 1-carat solitaires are $599. Our new high-end cabinets have hundreds of rare high-end items. You can't beat our deals. Buy factory direct and save. The Jewelry Exchange in Burlingame.
I leave work at 7, start my trip home, and that's when I make my call to my son. It gives me some dad time that much soon. It's like being home with him before I actually get home.
With Cingular's 7 to 7 plan, your nights start 2 hours earlier at 7 p.m. No one else offers that. Plus, get nationwide long distance. And get this color phone for just $49.99 with a $20 donation to Special Olympics.
I call it the Kyle Lewis It's Important My Night Start Early plan.
Come into Cingular now to find the plan that fits you best.
At 15 after the hour, here are the latest headlines. Now that Tikrit, the last major Iraqi stronghold, is under U.S. control, U.S. troops are shifting focus to eliminating the threat of bands of Iraqi and foreign fighters, restoring order and finding weapons of mass destruction. Part of the 4th Infantry Division is headed for Tikrit now. The division was supposed to invade Iraq from the north until Turkey refused to allow them access. Once the soldiers arrive in Tikrit, they'll take over for the Marines currently there. And we're hearing from the 7 rescued POWs for the first time. The Defense Department released new video of the soldiers. Here's Ronald Young, a pilot captured by Iraqi forces.
I'm a warrant officer. I'm a pilot. I got shot down.
We bring you the latest headlines every 15 minutes here on MSNBC and anytime on the web at iraq.msnbc.com. 26 days into the war, the last of Iraq's major cities has fallen. Coalition forces control Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit. The first blow to the Hussein regime came with the report city of Qasr. March 25th, just 5 days after bombing began in Baghdad. On April 2nd, Karbala collapses. And 5 days later, coalition forces take Basra. On April 9th, the dramatic pictures of Saddam Hussein's statue coming down in the heart of Baghdad as Iraqis cheer. Then April 10th, the oil-rich city of Kirkuk falls. Finally today, Tikrit, the final blow, Saddam's hometown and the last Iraqi stronghold, now in coalition hands. But the battle for the city was easier than anyone could have hoped. Julian Mannion of our British broadcast partner ITN has the battle details.
U.S. helicopter gunships blast Iraqi positions on the outskirts of Tikrit. But this was not the battle royal that many had predicted. And tonight, Saddam Hussein's hometown is firmly in American hands. Earlier, we drove in from the north on a dangerous road where a little later, militant Arabs fired on another group of journalists. We were lucky and got through to American positions at a half-destroyed bridge. We found U.S. Marines already in occupation of Tikrit's main square, still dominated by an equestrian statue of the fallen dictator. We joined the Marines as they pushed forward to secure the main populated area of the city. Ahead of us, helicopter gunships swooped over the rooftops. We're with a forward group of U.S. Marines which is advancing extremely cautiously towards what we believe is the central mosque of the city of Tikrit. The situation at the moment is calm, there's no shooting, but it is extremely tense. And it's clear that these American soldiers believe that they could come under fire at any moment. Many Tikritis had fled. Those who remained watched the American seizure of their city calmly, but with little warmth.
We support anyone who comes here, Saddam or anyone else. All we want is peace.
The Americans occupied government complexes and carefully secured the police headquarters, already half destroyed by bombing. Then suddenly the gunships went into action. American helicopters and now jets have been striking targets just beyond the outskirts of the city behind me over there. We've been told by local people that until yesterday this area was full of what they called Fedayeen, the irregular fighters who have been fighting on behalf of Saddam Hussein. And it's possible that those units have now tried to pull out northwards and are being attacked by the Americans from the air. In fact, the Iraqi fighters had withdrawn to a military base just outside the city, and it was immediately bombed by the Americans. The fight for Tikrit was effectively over. What remains are grandiose monuments to Saddam's rule. This was one of his favorite palaces, but today American armor filled his drive. Looters had already emptied the once magnificent buildings. The Americans found only empty chambers and no answer to the question of where the fallen tyrant may now be. Julian Mannion, ITV News, Tikrit.
And a lot of the talk today at the White House focused on Syria, the accusations that they're harboring Iraqi leaders and developing chemical weapons. NBC's Bob Kerr has more now from the White House.
Lester, Syria denies the accusations, but the administration cites a CIA report that Syria has chemical weapons, accuses Syria of harboring Iraqi leaders who fled Saddam Hussein's dying regime and of letting pro-Saddam fighters enter Iraq through Syria. Here at the White House, officials are deliberately vague about possible U.S. action, But Secretary of State Powell raises the threat of punishment.
Of course, we will examine possible measures of a diplomatic, economic, or other nature as we move forward.
Powell cites what he calls a new situation in the region. Here, Ari Fleischer outlines what the White House believes it should mean.
What the president is hopeful of is that in the outcome of this war, nations will examine the decisions they had previously made and hopefully make new decisions based on new reality in the Middle East. Gone is the brutal dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. Next, hopefully, is a re-examination by Syria and perhaps others about how they conduct their affairs and how diplomacy is conducted and whether or not they believe they should continue to be terrorist states or not.
Fleischer faced a lot of questions about hit lists and whether Syria was at the top of one, but there's no indication military action is contemplated. The president says each situation requires a different response. Lester, back to you.
The Bush administration may be getting some bipartisan support for cracking down on Syria. The House of Representatives will consider a bill called the Syrian Accountability Act that would impose tough new sanctions on the Middle Eastern nation. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is Democratic New York Congressman Eliot Engel, one of the bill's co-sponsors. Congressman, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Tell me what the Syrian Accountability Act would ask Syria to do.
It would ask Syria to stop its support for terrorism. It would also ask Syria to stop its occupation of Lebanon and to stop producing weapons of mass destruction.
Are these issues related to anything that we've seen in the last couple of weeks during the war with Iraq?
Well, they sure are. You know, first of all, Syria has been on the U.S. State Department's list of countries which support terrorism since the inception of that list in 1979. And yet it's the only country on that list with which we have normal diplomatic relations. In view of what they've been doing with Iraq, there are very credible reports that have said that Syria has purchased all kinds of weaponry for Iraq to be used and were used against U.S. Troops in Iraq, night goggles and the like. And now we know that conversely, the Iraqis, Saddam Hussein's henchmen, his half-brother and others, are fleeing towards the Syrian border, and Saddam himself may be in Syria. So we're saying to the Syrians, we really need you to stop your bad behavior, and if not, there are going to be sanctions implied.
And these are economic sanctions, but with 200,000 American troops in the neighborhood, you understand that some are concerned that the U.S. may be willing to take military action. Would you ever support military action against Syria?
Well, I don't know about ever. I certainly am not advocating military action against Syria. I think that what we need is the carrot and the stick approach, and hopefully Syria will change its ways. You know, they support international terrorism. Hezbollah is in southern Lebanon on Israel's northern border. They could not be there if it wasn't for Syria. Hezbollah is the group that murdered the U.S. Marines, over 200 in 1983, and is worse even than al-Qaeda. And so we think it's time to get tough with Syria and to say to Syria that we're not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. The equation has certainly changed.
And is it the time to get tough in general to those countries viewed as rogue nations? Has this war empowered the United States in a way that it wasn't empowered before?
Well, I think President Bush was precisely right after September 11th when he said that the fight against terrorism is going to be a lengthy fight, it's going to be a costly fight, but it's a fight that we have to win. So I think that we have an obligation wherever we see countries that, rogue countries that aid and help terrorists, that we have a right to try to stop that. And Syria, unfortunately, is one of those countries. It happens to be right next door to Iraq. And we think that perhaps even weapons of mass destruction are hidden in Syria from Iraq. So I think Syria's got a lot to speak about its bad behavior, and it certainly also needs to get out of Lebanon.
All right, Congressman Engel, we'll have to end right there. Hope we can chat again as this bill progresses. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How is the world reacting to the Bush administration's claims against the Syrian government? MSNBC's Bianca Solorzano joins us now from our listening post with details. Bianca.
Lester, tonight British Prime Minister Tony Blair is playing down claims the Syrian government is harboring Iraqi officials and also keeping chemical weapons. In his speech to Parliament today, Blair said he accepts Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's assurances that they would interdict anyone who was crossing over the border from Iraq. And British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw went one step further and said Syria is not next on the target list.
There are important questions which the Syrians need to answer. So far as is quote, Syria next on the list. We have made it clear that it is not. There is no next list. And the Prime Minister, British Prime Minister Blair, in the House of Commons last week said that he knew of no plans for Syria to be, quote, next on the list.
Meanwhile, Turkey is trying to improve its relations with Syria. The Turkish foreign minister says Syria should not become a target of the U.S. Quote, this war should end in Iraq. No one should allow new conflicts or new tensions in the region. Now Iraq, then Syria, then Iran. The region is worn out enough. And in a telephone interview on Al Jazeera television, a spokeswoman for Syria's foreign ministry denied the allegations, saying Israel is behind the accusations in an effort to sour U.S.-Syria relations. And finally tonight, United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan expressed his concern through his spokesman, saying, quote, the Secretary General is concerned that recent statements directed at Syria should not contribute to a wider destabilization in a region already affected heavily by the war in Iraq. And that's the latest from the MSNBC Listening Post at this hour. Lester, back to you.
Bianca, thank you. Another story we're following right now, the bodies of a woman and baby found in the waters near San Francisco a day apart. Right now, police working to determine if they are connected to a missing pregnant woman. A live report from California coming up. And the latest on the taking of Tikrit, the last major Iraqi city to fall out of the hands of Saddam's regime. A live report from U.S. Military Forward Command of the Persian Gulf when we come back.
Lesson 1. Did you know a dog's muscles are rebuilt about every 45 days? In fact, his entire body is constantly rebuilding, but without enough protein in his food, the whole process slows down. That's why Purina One adult formulas are scientifically formulated with an unsurpassed level of high-quality protein to help you enhance your dog's life by keeping him strong and fit. Purina One brand. One can make a difference.
All over America, people are throwing out their cable boxes and switching to DirecTV. That's because right now, when you call the number on your screen, you can get a free 2-room DirecTV system with professional installation. That's right, get a DirecTV system with the standard professional installation, a $250 value when you call Prime TV now. With DirecTV, you get access to over 225 available channels. And favorites like NFL Sunday Ticket, up to 14 of your favorite NFL games every Sunday throughout the regular season. And most importantly, you get access to your favorite local channels too. So you can say goodbye to your cable company forever and hello to more channels at lower prices with DirecTV. Just pick up the phone and call the number on your screen for your DirecTV system now.
Call 1-800-818-5851. That's 1-800-818-5851. So call 1-800-818-5851.
AT&T Broadband is now Comcast, and we're ready to upgrade your cable TV. Give your TV a fresh new look with the most popular digital networks and Showtime for bold originals, Hollywood hits, and championship boxing. Upgrade your TV. Get up to 240 channels, including Showtime, for just $9.95 more a month, plus free upgrade installation. Upgrade your TV room with a $50 gift card to the Home Depot just for ordering Showtime with this offer. Call 1-888-824-8174 now and let Comcast upgrade your TV.
People magazine calls Road to Perdition a glorious journey.
This is the life we chose, the life we lead.
A triumph, says Rolling Stone. Tom Hanks is terrific.
Get out!
And Joel Siegel calls Paul Newman perfect. From the director of American Beauty, order Road to Perdition on in-demand pay-per-view. The best way to rent this movie is at home on Comcast.
You're watching America's fastest-growing cable news network, MSNBC.
past the hour. Let's take a look at the latest headlines. U.S. forces are finding huge amounts of Iraqi weaponry, but so far no sign of weapons of mass destruction. The hunt is on, though, and today Marines went underground into a vast complex of tunnels beneath palaces in Baghdad. And south of the capital, soldiers uncovered several vehicles and are trying to determine if they are mobile biochemical labs. Defense officials say 3 aircraft carriers will be leaving the Gulf soon as the war winds down. The USS Kitty Hawk will return to its base in Japan around midweek, and the USS Constellation is expected to leave for San Diego. And the son of an Iraqi diplomat who worked at the United Nations has been arrested. The FBI says the 28-year-old is an agent of Iraq's intelligence service and was helping several known Iraqi spies. We bring you the latest headlines on MSNBC every 15 minutes. You can log on anytime on the web to catch up. Iraq.msnbc.com is the address. Let's get the latest now on the battlefield. Retired Marine Corps Major Jack Stradley. Major.
Lester, what we've seen today and continue to see is consolidation on the battlefield. U.S. forces, coalition forces are beginning to consolidate control, to begin to move or shift into security operations, protecting the force, beginning to restore order to the streets of Baghdad and other major cities, beginning to open up avenues for humanitarian aid to flow through, beginning to try and rebuild some of that infrastructure that was destroyed, water, electricity, highways, bridges, things like that. So it looks like we're also seeing the coalition host conference down in Nasiriyah within the hour on post-war Iraq. Lester?
Major, thanks. Let's go to NBC's David Schuster now. He's at CENTCOM Forward Headquarters in Qatar. David.
Lester, officials here at Central Command also saying what was said at the Pentagon yesterday, and that is the major combat operations in Iraq are now over. Some of the troops, of course, are still on guard as they conduct some of their patrols, especially in places like Tikrit, which was the site of the last skirmish, if you want to call it that. In Tikrit, there was a small level of resistance, according to officials here at Central Command. But in the end, when the U.S. troops, the U.S. Marines, walked into the presidential palace, they did it without having to fire a shot. You can see some of the armored vehicles moving around Tikrit. This, of course, was Saddam Hussein's hometown. There had been some fears that perhaps there might be a certain level of resistance in Tikrit, but when the Marines went into the town, they found that most of the Republican Guard units had abandoned their post. In Baghdad, Marines are patrolling the streets now with some of the members of the Iraqi police force. Some 2,000 policemen have returned to their jobs. The Marines are trying to bring some level of stability to a city that has no functioning hospitals, no electricity, very little water. Officials are hoping, though, that the looting will at least decrease. But at Central Command, they're pointing out that this sort of police operation is not what U.S. Marines or soldiers are trained for. And so the focus here at Central Command is now shifting to that meeting that the Major was talking about, the meeting at Nasiriyah 2 hours from now, in which retired General Jay Garner will be meeting with some 70 leaders of the Iraqi groups who will be meeting to talk about the possible future of Iraq. This is an invitation-only meeting, an invitation that was turned down by the largest Shiite group in Iraq. They were concerned about some of the invitations issued to some of their opponents. But in any case, that is the first of several meetings in what officials believe will be the beginning of the new Iraq. Lester?
David, thank you. A developing story we're following tonight. A mysterious find brings up an old case in the San Francisco Bay Area. The discovery of a woman's body one day after the body of a baby was found is raising questions connected to the disappearance of Laci Peterson. Let's get the latest now from NBC's James Hattori outside Richmond, California. James?
Good evening, Lester. It's probably too early to say whether this is a break in the case of Laci Peterson, but investigators who have come here from Modesto to check this out certainly are taking a very keen interest. The coroner's office in Contra Costa County is expected to begin examining the remains that were found today, if they have not already begun that examination tonight. 27-year-old Laci Peterson disappeared Christmas Eve day, and the search has been on since then. Contra Costa coroner may have an ID sometime tomorrow, but this comes, as you say, a day after another set of remains was discovered, that of a fetus or a newborn boy about a mile away, also on San Francisco Bay. Now, Laci Peterson was 8 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance. One other coincidence, her husband told police that he went fishing that same day that she disappeared at a marina. So, of course, they've been out in this area before searching and have not found anything. And they have said that that Mr. Peterson is not considered a suspect officially, although they also say that he has not been ruled out as a suspect. And as I say, Modesto officials have been here on the scene. They accompanied the remains that were removed from this site earlier this evening, and they obviously are very keen in finding out what we all want to know, when the coroner makes a determination of the identity of that body. Lester, that's the latest.
And James, give us a sense, how far is the scene of this discovery from where Mr. Peterson was says he was fishing that day?
This is Richmond, Point Isabel rather. Berkeley Marina is where he told investigators he went fishing, and that's, I'm going to guess, is probably 3 or 4 miles maybe down south of here. And then just to give you a little idea, the baby, the fetus, was found perhaps a mile to the north of here, all on San Francisco Bay here, across the bay from San Francisco.
James Sartori. James, thank you very much for the update. In New Orleans, a deadly shooting inside a high school gym. 1 student is dead, 3 others injured. The New Orleans mayor says he believes the shooting was retaliation for a deadly shooting about 2 weeks ago. New Orleans police say 4 suspects are under arrest. The oldest is 19. They also say none of them are students at the school. Police don't know how the weapon got in, since the school has metal detectors and security guards. Latest in the war on terror now, the Justice Department signaling again that it doesn't want to put accused terrorist Zacarias Moussaoui in front of a military tribunal. This after the judge in that case said she was disturbed by the, quote, shroud of secrecy around the trial of the so-called 20th hijacker. Moussaoui wants to defend himself, but the government won't release much of the evidence against him because the information they claim is classified. In the war on terror, a man accused of conspiring to help al-Qaeda pleaded guilty to felony conspiracy today. James Ujamaa will serve 2 years in prison and is expected to testify against a radical London cleric considered one of Europe's key terror recruiters. Charges of plotting to set up a terrorist camp in Oregon were dropped. The White House today accusing Syria of sending military equipment to Iraq and helping members of its former regime. Is there a possibility of extending the war with Iraq to go after certain targets within Syria? Retired Marine Corps Major Jack Stradley joins me in the war room to talk options here. Jack, thanks for joining us.
Sure, Lester.
Let's talk about this. During the war, we were hearing that night vision goggles, other material were coming in from Syria.
Right.
Now we're seeing these irregular fighters, some of whom may come from Syria. Do you think that the U.S. could be justified to go after targets if it could identify them within Syria?
Well, I think there's a precedence to do that, Lester. I think first, as we start to flow troops up a little bit further into the western desert, we've had special operations forces out there and limited forces in the past. Now, as we can move some of the 4th ID out there, we can maybe seal that border off a little bit better. But if, in fact, we find camps or objectives inside Syria, Saddam Hussein, for example, there is a precedence to go after it. That would be a political question, obviously, but...
And that would be different. I mean, if you sent a plane in to just take a specific target, that would be different than what we're hearing today in terms of weapons of mass destruction. This would be related specifically